Hello everyone, in the current session let us discuss about drugs for heart failure part 1, and in the session we will be focusing on rationale for drug therapy and the classification of drugs for heart failure. Coming to the rationale for drug therapy, the primary goal of drug therapy in heart failure is to improve the cardiac function and to reduce the clinical symptoms associated with heart failure. Example are edema, shortness of breath, exercise tolerance, etc. And improving cardiac function along with reduction of blood volume can dramatically improve the clinical symptoms of heart failure. And the treatment of heart failure caused by systolic dysfunction follows clear clinical guidelines, whereas diastolic dysfunction is more difficult to treat and therefore no clear consensus regarding the best therapeutic options other than targeting clinical symptoms related to fluid retention are employed. So systolic dysfunction or systolic heart failure has clear clinical guidelines, whereas diastolic dysfunction is more difficult to treat. There, only the clinical symptoms are targeted by pharmacological agents. Now here you can see the ventricular functional curves. Here there is a relationship between stroke volume and left ventricular and diastolic pressure. A point is the operating point for non-failing heart. This line indicates normal healthy heart, whereas B point is the operating point for failing heart. The red line indicates a failing heart. And C are the effects of diuretic or venodilator. Effect of diuretic or venodilator on failing heart, and D are the effects of mixed vasodilator or inotropic effects on the failing heart. We will be discussing this graph in the further sessions. Coming to systolic dysfunction, it is the most common type of heart failure, accounting for 60 to 70% of heart failure patients. And this form of failure results from a loss of intrinsic contractility and is generally associated with a dilated ventricle. Systolic dysfunction is generally associated with a dilated ventricle. And a decrease in stroke volume coupled to an increase in ventricular and diastolic volume or pressure also leads to significant reduction in ejection fraction. And normally the ejection fraction EF is greater than 55%, and in case of severe systolic dysfunction the ejection fraction is less than 20%. So a decrease in stroke volume coupled with an increase in left ventricular and diastolic volume leads to significant reduction in ejection fraction, which is a characteristic of systolic heart failure. Hence the name heart failure with reduced ejection fraction is given for systolic heart failure. And an example of systolic dysfunction is dilated cardiomyopathy, which is a result from known or unknown disease that impair the ventricular function. Here you can see, generally with systolic dysfunction, the Frank-Starling curves, it shifts down and to the right because of the loss of contractility. With systolic dysfunction, the Frank-Starling curve shifts downwards from A to B due to loss of contractility, and when this occurs, the stroke volume is reduced. Here you can see, here the stroke volume is greater. And when the curve is shifting from A to B towards right side, here you can see the stroke volume, reduction in stroke volume and preload with significant increase in left ventricular and diastolic pressure. Whenever a heart shifts from normal to failing state, there will be a reduction in stroke volume and simultaneously there will be an increase in left ventricular and diastolic pressure. And the compensatory increase in blood volume further increases the preload and it dilates the ventricle. And the ideal drug intervention would be to increase the stroke volume and to reduce the preload. And ventricular stroke volume can be generally improved by several routes. The first one is increasing preload, decreasing afterload, and increasing ionotrophy. Here, in order to increase the ventricular stroke volume, increasing preload has a deleterious effect in case of heart failure patients. So this route is not employed, and decreasing afterload and increasing ionotrophy are employed in case of therapeutic interventions. Now coming to the treatment principles for chronic systolic heart failure. There are mainly 5 principles which are employed for the treatment of chronic systolic heart failure. The first one is neurohumoral modulation, and the second is reduction of preload, and next is afterload reduction, and increasing cardiac contractility. Next is reduction of heart rate. These are the 5 principles which are employed in case of drug therapy for chronic systolic heart failure. First of all, coming to neurohumoral modulation. Dampening of neurohumoral activation and its deleterious consequences on the heart, blood vessels and kidney is the cornerstone of heart failure therapy. Dampening or reducing the neurohumoral activation and its deleterious consequences is the cornerstone of heart failure therapy. And the drugs which aid in achieving the neurohumoral modulation are ACE inhibitors, angiotensin receptor blockers, and neprilysin inhibitors, beta blockers, and mineralocorticoid receptor antagonists. These are the drugs which follow the principal neurohumoral modulation. Now coming to the next thing, preload reduction. The fluid overload with increased filling pressure, that is nothing but increased preload and dilation of ventricles in heart failure, is a consequence of decreased kidney perfusion and activation of renin-angiotensin system. Fluid overload and increased filling pressure, increased preload and dilation of ventricle is a consequence of decreased kidney perfusion and activation of renin-angiotensin system. And the drugs which achieve reduction of preload are diuretics. Since preload is usually increased in heart failure, the better therapy would be to reduce the preload, and the drugs which achieve this goal are diuretics. They increase the sodium and water excretion by inhibiting transporters in the kidney, and thereby they improve the symptoms of congestive heart failure by moving patients to lower cardiac filling pressure along the same ventricular functional curve. And the diuretics which are used in heart failure are loop diuretics, thiazide diuretics, and potassium sparing diuretics. Coming to the next principle, that is afterload reduction. The failing heart is exquisitely sensitive to increased arterial resistance. That is nothing but afterload. The failing heart is exquisitely sensitive to increased arterial resistance, that is nothing but afterload, and it significantly enhances ventricular stroke volume. Here you can see a shift from B to D. And ejection fraction in failing heart, because the afterload is often elevated in heart failure, and this reduces the ejection velocity. So increased afterload, it significantly enhances the stroke volume. For that reason, afterload reduction must be done. Therefore, reducing the afterload has been found to be very effective in the treatment of systolic dysfunction because it increases the stroke volume and decreases the preload. Reducing the afterload increases the stroke volume. Here you can see a shift from B to D. Here the stroke volume is increased and there will be a decrease in preload, thereby improving the ejection fraction. And the drugs which achieve afterload reduction are vasodilators with broader mode and renin-angiotensin system inhibitors. The next principle is increasing ionotrophy. Increasing ionotrophy, here also it follows same principle. A shift from B to D is seen. It increases the stroke volume and ejection fraction and is used in the treatment of heart failure. positive inotropic drugs should only be used for acute systolic failure or end stage failure. This is an important point. The positive inotropic drug should only be used for acute systolic failure or end stage failure. The short-term benefit of drugs, which are sympathomimetics, PD inhibitors in acute heart failure is seen. They increase the stroke volume and increase ejection fraction and reduce the preload. Whereas prolonged use of these drugs have been shown to worsen the outcome, and it increased the mortality in some patients because of increased oxygen demand. So, positive inotropic drugs are mainly employed for short-term therapy. Prolonged use of these drugs has deleterious outcome as it increases the mortality in some patients because it increases oxygen demand. So, coming to vasodilator and inotropic drugs. Then combination of vasodilator and inotropic drugs. They not only enhance the organ perfusion but also reduce the pulmonary and systemic edema, increasing cardiac output. They cause increased cardiac output. These drugs enhance the stroke volume, and by doing so they decrease the preload on ventricle and lower the proximal atrial and venous pressure. They also decrease afterload and decreasing afterload and increasing inotropy. Both reduce the end systolic volume, which causes the end diastolic volume to decrease secondarily. And reduction of venous pressure decreases capillary pressure and fluid filtration in lungs, which is seen in left-sided failure, and systemic tissues, which is seen in right-sided failure, thereby diminishing the edema. So these are some of the therapeutic benefits of vasodilator and inotropic drugs. Coming to diuretics, they are used in most heart failure patients because heart failure leads to renal retention of sodium and water, which increases the blood volume and venous pressure. And these changes, they promote vascular congestion and edema formation. Pulmonary edema, which occurs with left ventricular failure, can be life-threatening because pulmonary oxygen exchange is compromised. And the diuretics, they promote renal loss of sodium and water and therefore are effective in reducing the vascular congestion and edema. Almost all heart failure patients are placed on a diuretic in addition to other drugs, which are vasodilators and cardiostimulatory drugs. And although diuretics reduce ventricular preload, that they show a shift from B to C, this generally does not significantly reduce the stroke volume because depressed Frank-Starling curve in systolic dysfunction is relatively flat at high preload volumes and pressures. Coming to the next principle, that is reduction of heart rate. Heart rate is a strong determinant of cardiac energy consumption, and higher heart rates in patients with heart failure are associated with poor prognosis. Partial agonists of beta receptors such as Zamaterol, it increases the nocturnal heart rate, that is, they prevent the physiological dip in nighttime and are associated with excess mortality in patients with heart failure. And conversely, beta blockers, they lower the heart rate and improve the survival prognosis. So the drugs which aid in reducing the heart rate are beta blockers, and other drug is ivabradine. Another drug used in some patients with systolic heart failure is ivabradine. It is relatively new drug that blocks the sinoatrial funny currents that are largely responsible for generating pacemaker currents controlling the heart rate. This reduces the heart rate and myocardial oxygen demand, and it is beneficial in heart failure patients. As we have discussed earlier, beta blockers also reduce heart rate acting on beta adrenoreceptors. They can also depress ionotrophy. So ivabradine is a pure heart rate reducing drug. So a pure bradycardiac drug is ivabradine. Coming to the diastolic dysfunction. So this type of ventricular failure is related to impaired ventricular filling caused by hypertrophied, that is less compliant ventricles, or by impaired ventricular relaxation. This point we have discussed in the pathophysiology of heart failure. The primary cause for diastolic dysfunction is impaired ventricular relaxation. Hypertrophy can result from chronic hypertension or aortic valve stenosis, and some patients may have a genetic defect that causes hypertrophic cardiomyopathy (HCM). The diastolic dysfunction can also occur due to stiffening of ventricular wall, which is caused by fibrosis. And these patients will often have normal or near normal ejection fractions. This is also a characteristic feature. Diastolic dysfunction results in large increase in ventricular end diastolic pressure, which can lead to pulmonary edema. Despite a large end diastolic pressure, the end diastolic volume may actually be reduced because of decreased ventricular compliance. So, diastolic dysfunction is more difficult to treat than systolic dysfunction. And if there is pulmonary edema, diuretics are given cautiously because removing too much volume can significantly reduce end diastolic volume and stroke volume in these stiff ventricles. So care must be taken whenever diuretics are prescribed in diastolic dysfunction or diastolic heart failure. The other drugs are calcium channel blockers, verapamil and diltiazem. These drugs are contraindicated in systolic dysfunction because they reduce inotrophy and stroke volume, but inotrophy may be normal in diastolic dysfunction. So these drugs do not seriously impair the stroke volume in patients with diastolic dysfunction. They have their benefit by improving ventricular relaxation and reducing the heart rate, which permits more time for filling. They also promote regression of cardiac hypertrophy, reduce the arterial pressure and improve the coronary blood flow. These are some of the benefits of calcium channel blockers in diastolic dysfunction, whereas calcium channel blockers are contraindicated in systolic dysfunction. Next are beta blockers. They help these patients by promoting regression of hypertrophy, reducing arterial pressure, lowering heart rate and reducing inotrophy. The negative inotropic effects of both calcium channel blockers and beta blockers are particularly useful in patients with hypertrophied cardiac myopathy that also has outflow obstruction. AC inhibitors are also used because of their beneficial effects on ventricular remodeling and arterial pressure. Coming to cardiostimulatory drugs, especially sympathomimetics and digitalis compounds. These are not used in treating diastolic dysfunction because with obstructive HCM, increased inotrophy can cause increased outflow of obstruction. Hence, cardiostimulatory drugs, sympathomimetics and digitalis compounds are prevented or contraindicated in diastolic dysfunction. Coming to the classification of drugs for heart failure. Coming to the classification, whenever the therapeutic principle is to relieve of congestive or low output symptoms or restoration of cardiac performance and treatment of acute decompensation, the drugs employed are inotropic drugs. Example is digoxin, dobutamine or dopamine, inamirinone and milrinone. Next is diuretics. Example is furosemide, thiazides and metolazone. RAS inhibitors are AC inhibitors or angiotensin receptor blockers. The vasodilators used are hydralazine, nitrates and nitroprusside. Synthetic natriuretic peptide BNP is nesiritide. And beta blockers used are metoprolol, bisoprolol, carvedilol and nebivolol. So whenever the therapeutic principle is to arrest or reversal of disease prognosis and prolongation of survival, the drugs used are AC inhibitors or angiotensin receptor blockers, beta blockers, aldosterone antagonists such as spironolactone and eplerenone. Next is neprilyl inhibitors, example is sacubitril, and finally other drugs which are used in heart failure are myofilament calcium sensitizers, example is levosimendan and pimobendan. The next are mineralocorticoid receptor antagonists, which are nothing but spironolactone, And the next is vasopressin receptor antagonist, tolvaptan, and finally heparin and other anticoagulants. These are some of the drugs which are employed in the treatment of heart failure. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe for further videos on pharmacology and other related pharmaceutical sciences.